All right, everybody. I'm Logan Alec. I'm a CPA. This is the Logan Alec Show, and today I am talking to a Bradley Jarryd. That is Jared with an RRYD. Brad has a YouTube channel called the Comeback Card Investor, in which he talks about trading sports cards and making some decent money doing that. Hi, Brad. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Logan. Yeah, man. Even you saying that is like reinforcing how much of a dream come true this is, especially with YouTube and being able to do something I loved at it when I was 10 or 12 years old, but I wasn't good at it. But now being able to use every lesson and philosophy and principle that we've gotten from all the financial greats to apply it to such a fun, childlike hobby and actually make part-time or full-time income. It's like you can't really get a better job or a better career than that. So, thinking back to about a year and a half ago, it's incredible what a year and a half can do. So I'm just having a lot of fun, and to be able to make money having fun is just an amazing situation.
That sounds incredible. We're definitely going to get into today talking about how people can make money with trading cards, but I want to hear a little bit about that childhood passion you had. Kind of how did you come to this place of creating this channel, Comeback Card Investor, making money with sports cards? Just give us a brief synopsis of kind of your story and how you got to this point.
Sure. I mean, look, as a kid, I think maybe not most, but a lot of people in America that grew up in the late 80s throughout the 90s bought sports cards, collected it, went to Kmart and Target and Walmart and busted open the packs and
I
got
did.
some cards. Yeah, it was so much fun. And back then it was very easy because you'd go in and you'd buy a box for $20. It'd be an entire box, and you'd open it up and hopefully get all the Jordans and get all the Emmett Smiths and the Troy Aikmans. And so it was a lot of fun. But what led me to this was honestly desperation. And it's desperation for fun in my life because looking back, I'm 34 now, and I feel like I've gotten more gray hairs prior to COVID, in that last year or two in my 30s before getting into sports cards, because life just got so serious. Everything was relationships, career, finance, and I think it's just the natural way of the world where you get older, fun starts to dwindle. The priority to have fun goes further and further down the list, and everything turns into, well, when my career is built, when my relationship is perfect, when this bill is paid, when I have this car, when I do all this, then I will allow myself to have fun. And, I noticed myself listening to more 90s music over the last several years. I noticed myself watching TV shows like Girl Meets World just to get a bit of that Boy Meets World flavor, watching these shows. And I was looking for a way to connect to my childhood. And that's all fun and dandy. And maybe that's normal if you're in your 30s and 40s. But what really got me was Gary V, right? It always comes back to Gary V. Gary V talks about sports cards. I used to do it in the 80s. I loved it. And I was making good money. And he's saying sports cards are back and they're going to be bigger than ever and all this. Probably took me about 6 or 7 times for him to say that, for me to actually look into sports cards. Because back when we were 12 years old, a $10 card was a legitimate card. Right? $10 for a card is like, hey, that must be a rookie card. That must be a good one. And now when I did the research, February of 2020, a month before quarantine, I was like, oh my God, there's cards that are $1,000 and $2,000 and $3,000. And so the more I saw it, the more intrigued, and also more fun I was having. And that's a pretty cool combo. So when that was going on, I said, you know what, hold on, let me do a bit more research. And then once quarantine happened, I had a business coach that was helping me create financial courses because my background is personal finance, it's marketing. And I was looking to create some sort of course that combined a lot of these principles we learned from Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki and all the rest into something that made sense for me, and also for models and actors that shared my background. But everything I was doing was just so dry, so boring. And I was like, you know what? I told him, I said, I can't even create this course. And my coach, James, shout out to James Swanwick, who's a great mentor of mine. He said, well, look, the only thing that you seem to light up about is talking about sports cards. Why don't you just dive in for 30 days straight and just invest in cards, learn about it, and then create a YouTube station around cards as well, because you're already looking to do that and you've done it in the past. Just do that for 30 days. And that was, I believe, April of 2020. And since that moment, I didn't look back. There was no financial programs coming from me because I knew that I could teach these lessons that I was still learning myself via cards and then be the proof of the pudding when I'm investing with these principles, whether they turn out right or not. There's always a lesson to be shared. But yeah, that's how I got back into it. It was pretty much desperation.
So, okay, you mentioned the date April 2020. So, if I were to ask you 2 years ago, let's say back in April 2019, if you would have thought that 2 years from now you would be making money selling trading cards, would you have laughed me off? Would that have even been a blip on your radar because you were so focused on those other things, creating the courses and the personal finance stuff and all that stuff?
If you were Gary Vee, I probably would have taken you seriously. But
Okay.
anyone else? No, I would say, look, when you're a kid, I think the dream job that a lot of us kids hear as a joke is roller coaster tester. Hey, when I grow up, I'm going to be a roller coaster tester. You're going to go around and just test all the roller coasters and make sure they're fun. And this was just too unrealistic. This was just too much of like a, if only that were true.
It's like a pipe dream,
so, yeah,
it's a dream, right? Like to make
yeah,
money
I mean,
doing
like,
what many kids consider a hobby.
right. Like, how
Yeah.
about I just travel around the country and get paid for eating pudding, right?
Right,
That
yeah.
doesn't exist,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, maybe in 2021, you're a pudding blogger and all this, you're a pudding, the rules are out of the window in 2020 and 2021, but I would have never believed it. And I mean, it's just been a wild ride. And so now the more money that's into sports cards, the more opportunities that come, because now there are data tools, great ones out there like Market Movers that I know that you're affiliate of, and I am as well. And it helps people make better decisions. It opens up the door for other sponsorships and for all these other companies and all these other jobs to be created. So yeah, I mean, it's helped turn this little part-time income into a full-time income pursuit. And it's actually doable based on having money to invest, getting better at your strategy every week and every month, having patience, and then being able to build a YouTube station and do some other things that will really be consistent as you have those feast or famine months.
All right, so let's go back to about a year ago now, April 2020.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make your first dollar involving trading cards a year ago?
Okay, so what I was doing is I was learning about the different platforms at which you can buy. So when you think of all the different ways you could buy sports cards, before all the technology took over, you had go to garage sales, go to flea markets, classified ads, and then there was eBay. And eBay still today is the biggest platform for sports cards. But then there were a couple other platforms that I learned about, one in specific that really revolutionized the way I looked at doing this, which is called COMC, COMC.com. It's short for check out my cards.
COMC.com. Okay, let me pull that up here real
Yeah,
quick.
pull it up. And look, it's not the nicest looking website. It was created in 2011, I believe, and it doesn't have that brand new, fresh Apple, cool hipster blog type of look. But it is a giant warehouse up in Washington where people send in millions and millions of cards and they upload it for you. So all you have to do is go in there, and what I can do is I could actually show you on my screen what it looks like in some of the sales. But they house millions of cards, and then you list them yourself, and people all over the country or all over the world will buy it. So if you click on one of those cards, I mean, it would probably say, you need to sign in to be able to buy it. But that card is stored digitally. All those cards is from one seller right there, and that is all stored in their warehouse. But you can list the price that you want for it, and someone can buy it and not have to take physical ownership of the card. Now, they can always request for it to come to them at a later date in like a bundle. Like maybe I have 1,000 cards that I want to get sent to me. They send it all together. But this way, you can really buy and trade $5 and $8 and $20 cards without listing it on eBay, mailing it, shipping it, and then all of a sudden you've spent an hour on a $4 profit, which makes no sense.
So this sounds kind of like almost like would drop shipping be the word, kind of like in the e-com world? Like you don't actually have to you don't have to take physical ownership of the property to kind of resell it. Is it kind of like that kind of concept, but with trading cards?
Okay, well, so someone would need the card to begin with. Why?
Right.
Because you
Okay.
take the card and it's going to get sent to their warehouse. And once it's in their warehouse, it is uploaded, and that seller can sell it for a penny or $1,000. Doesn't matter. The person who buys it now owns that card, period. However, they don't have to have it mailed to them. So they
Hmm.
own it in the system, in the warehouse there. And if they want to retrieve it at some point, they can do so. Or if they want to just relist it and sell it in another 3 months or 6 months, they can do that. So at first, I was intrigued because this website had pretty much every card in existence. And
Really.
to me, it was a library. It's a place where I learned about all the cards, all the things, seeing like, well, why is this set so much more valuable than this one? How come someone like Steph Curry, how come his prices are so much less than Kevin Durant's over here, but not over here? And then when you
Huh.
find these disparities, then you start piecing it together, and you start using this data to say, you know what, hold on a second. LeBron's prices are 2 times what Steph Curry's are all over the place, but his price is only 20% more on in this specific set and year. Why is that? And is
Hmm.
that an opportunity to buy that LeBron James card, knowing that there's room to grow? So it was a lot of learning. But then after a while, I said, all right, let me put in some money. Let me put in $50, $100, $200, and buy a $2 card. And because I could see how much it sold for in the past, and I could see there's only 2 other sellers selling it for way more than this very low price right here. What if I buy this really low one and then relist it for double? And then I do it, and then a couple of weeks pass, and I sell it, and I turn, I see $2 turn into 4 and $6 turn into 12. And at any point, I could show you my screen and show you some of the sales, because it doesn't matter if it's a $2 profit or a $200 profit. The dopamine hit and that feeling of man, this is fun. It happens. It doesn't matter what your budget is.
Right. Right. It's there. There's definitely a thrill there. So this COMC.com. This is where you bought your first. Is this where you bought and sold your first trading card and,
Yeah.
and made that profit on it about a year ago? Wow.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh yeah.
now, how did you know? How did how did you know what to buy? I mean, so I mean, trade cards as a kid. I did too. It was fun. I didn't really have any knowledge of the economics of trading cards, right? I just knew, oh, it's a Michael Jordan card. Oh, it's a Michael Jordan rookie card.
Mhm.
Like, how did you even know what to buy and that you would be able to sell it for a profit later on?
Yeah. Well, that's what's funny about this hobby, is that it is so much fun, and there's so much emotion, and there's so many shiny objects that you soon realize, if you dive in, you soon realize that 99% of cards are not good investments. There is just a small percentage of cards that have the high sales volume that collectors enjoy, that flippers will gravitate to. And all of it took a lot of learning. It took, I was watching Sports Card Investors videos and listening to his podcast over a year ago. I remember driving to Vegas and listening to every single podcast straight, just because he was the source that was speaking to me in my language, which is more of here are the basics, here is the investment style, and this is what makes sense from a more tried and true philosophy versus, hey, I think this player is good, I'm going to buy his card. Well, guess what? That player has 500 different cards. So
Mm,
now we have to know which one to narrow it down to. So if you really believe in this player, it needs to be his rookie card, but not just his rookie card. We want to focus on these 3 sets that are most popular, but we also want to make sure it is with this grading company, and it has this grade or this grade or this grade. So I tell everyone, if you're interested in looking at sports cards as a side hustle, spend 3 weeks minimum just absorbing everything. Go on YouTube, go on podcasts, learn from different people, and piece it together, because it's very easy to spend a lot of money thinking you're investing in cards the right way, when in actuality you are buying the shiny objects that will be very hard to liquidate, especially at a profit.
so what are the key factors here? Obviously, I think you just mentioned them. Obviously, the player, right, who's on the card. I
Mhm.
think that's probably obvious to everybody. But not just the player, but also, okay, the rookie card is probably. Do you mostly trade rookie cards? Is that kind of where most of the profit is?
Right. And so when you think of it like a condo tower, and you think the penthouse is the most desirable of all the units, and then
Mm.
it goes down from there. And so every player has their most desirable card, and it's typically the rookie card because that's the first year in their league, in the league. That's the
Right.
first glimpse you have of that player, and so it's more iconic. So you think of Michael Jordan's rookie card, or Kobe Bryant's, or LeBron James, all these guys. That is traditionally the holy grail card for that player. Now, there are some rare cards out there. There are ones with autographs or pieces of the jersey or unique pictures or just extremely low print runs where there might only be 10 of that card in existence, which is way more scarce. But as a rule of thumb, the rookie card is the card that you would want to gravitate to at first. With guys like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and LeBron, their legacies are so humongous. They're so ingrained in the hobby, and they're so collectible that even their second year cards are worth a lot of money. Even some random cards are worth hundreds and maybe thousands of dollars because they are just that iconic in the hobby. But vast majority of players I won't touch unless it is their rookie card. And of that rookie card, it is the top 3 or 4 rookie cards that people really respect the most.
I see. So, okay. So, do players have, does the valuable players card have kind of a lifespan? Because we've been talking here about players that are in recent memory, either active players, right, like LeBron, or players that have played in the past few decades, like Kobe Bryant, right, or Michael Jordan. But stars of the '60s and '70s are those still profitable cards, or is there kind of a shelf life based on a player's career before they kind of get maybe stale, for lack of a better word?
Well, I would say the cards from the 60s and 70s, it depends who the player is. Is it Will Chamberlain? Then yeah, it's because that is an icon, right? Kind of like the Mickey Mantle card where you grow up hearing about the Mickey Mantle or the Honus Wagner. And I'm like, I don't even know who Honus Wagner is, except I know his card because it's that iconic. So if you're a Hall of Famer, if you're an all-time great, yeah, it's going to be worth a lot of money. And also the cards that were printed back then were only a fraction of the number of copies that they print now. And so if you're able to get one for a good price, it's very stable. But I think what's very interesting about the hobby is that, I think Bill Russell just passed away. I believe he's a Celtic great. I don't know too much about Bill Russell, but one of the best ever. When you're in the 60s and 70s and you're talking about players that aren't relevant in media, then there's not too much reason for the values to spike, right? They have their legacy, like a blue chip stock in a way, but there's not many reasons for their prices to really go through the roof overnight. But then you have someone like Magic Johnson who is relevant today. He's active with the Dodgers. I believe he's maybe part owner of the Lakers, something like that. He's on TV, and then he has a documentary coming out. And so all those factors make him a lot more interesting for the short term, but also make him very valuable long term just because of his legacy. So it really boils down to legacy over everything else. But legacy, I will say, is not just tied to on field or on court, because who is the person off field? Who's the person, are they in the media? Or do they have a huge social media following? Or are they a movie star or pursuing that? What's their personality like? And so Peyton Manning, for example, great NFL player, but he's also very likable. He's in the news. He's always in commercials. And so I think that helps fuel his prices. So that's a long-winded answer, but shelf life, it's on field and on court. How are you doing? And then what is your legacy overall?
So in terms of the fluctuations in prices of sports cards, like, let's say take Peyton Manning, right? Very likable guy, right? Obviously hugely successful in his career. Let's say some scandal, right? Either with his wife or just something happens where his public image is kind of broken for a time. Well, how much of a drop? Well, first of all, would there be a drop to like the value of cards? And like, are we talking about like the cards would drop maybe by like 50% in value? Or, I mean, how volatile is this based on kind of the public perception of the player at any given moment?
It's incredibly.
Wow.
And I can show you a really good example if you'd like. And it wouldn't be Peyton Manning. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. I'm actually going to use Market Movers. This is the tool that I love because it's very good for reverse engineering the results you want. And so if you want to make $100 off of a card, and then you could take a look at the prior sales charts and all that stuff, you can actually piece together, okay, I think would be realistic. So let me show you Deshaun Watson. And I'm sure if you follow football, you know Deshaun Watson's name. Logan, are you familiar with him? You can say no.
I'm sorry to say, no.
Okay, hold on. Let me share this. All good. Okay, right here, the crazy Golden State Bridge.
Got it. Yep, I see it. The bridge there.
Okay, so check this out. Deshaun Watson is a quarterback for the Houston Texans, and he demanded a trade, or he said, "I'm not going to play for the Houston Texans anymore. I want out." And so, if you see here, this was literally a year ago. These prices here, you see how low it is, $143, $150. This is just where the market was back then. These numbers aren't realistic anymore, but it just shows you how much money has now entered the hobby. Then we had this giant spike at the beginning of football season last year. This was the first bubble we had in the hobby, and this was the first real bubble we had. And this is when it popped back here. We had upcoming election. We had stimulus money running out. We have a lot of uncertainty, and it just prices softened. But then if you take a look towards the end, this is Christmas. So this is after the football season ended, right. And Deshaun said, I want out of the Texans. This card went from $486 all the way up to, if we include this one, $1,500.
Wow.
And look, this is February 16th. So this is about, 2 months, a bit less than 2 months later, went from 400 and change to 1,500, about three times, or another $1,000. And then what the big news was, all these women came forward accusing Deshaun Watson of sexual harassment and sexual assault from these massage parlors. So I think there's about 20 something women that have accused him of these allegations. And so now he's in this legal battle. So now this card goes from 1,200, 1,300, 11, 10, okay, 13, all the way down. And the bottom price here, $550.
Wow, that's over 50%. Wow.
Yeah, from just the 15th of February to the 6th of April.
Wow,
so if you want to talk about
months.
Volatility, that's what you can find when there's news. But the good part about it is that when you have volatility, but you're also someone with principles, and you understand, okay, overreaction one way, overreaction the other way, how do I gauge this appropriately? How do I be a bit more logical versus emotional? It's not the end of the world, but it's also not everything's going to be great, and kind of balance that out. You can find some good opportunities, because this is such an emotional hobby, because it's tied to our favorite teams and players, that if you could put that to the side, you can actually find a strategy that works.
Now let's talk about that website you were using there for a second, the Market Mover Sport Card Investor. I don't want to make this a tutorial on that, but do you have videos on your channel that would explain? Because that seems like an awesome. I didn't even know something until today. When we talked earlier on the phone, I kind of checked out your channel. I didn't even know something like that existed, right? That can show you, like a stock, right, the value of this card, what it's been selling for at various price points, and chart out like a graph. I mean, that's pretty sophisticated. Much more sophisticated when I was a kid, looking at the Beckett, paperbacks, at Barnes and Noble or something. Do you have videos on your channel that kind of explain how to use that tool, or some kind of tutorial on that?
Yeah, I have several videos on just my thought process and how I go through COMC and market movers. I do have a weekly email where what I like to do and use the tool for is, I like to see what has dropped the most over the last 30 and 60 days, to see what trend is over with, see where the prices have dropped, and then I go in on those cards for the next round. The next, like for example, Kobe Bryant's cards, just like most players from the 90s and 2000s, went through the roof in January and February, because there wasn't new products, there weren't new cards to talk about, the rookies weren't out yet, and the basketball season was also up in the air. There were a lot of teams that were just mediocre. There weren't a lot of teams that were looking phenomenal. And now that we get closer to the playoffs, those prices are going up. But the point is that Kobe Bryant's prices went through the roof. Well, Kobe Day is August 24th. He has an upcoming documentary. He has an upcoming Hall of Fame enshrinement. So what I do is I use that tool to see, okay, how low has that price gotten recently? When has it started to really plateau where we have 4 or 5 or 6 sales that are very similar in price? So people are comfortable at that level. It's not continuing to go down. It's just plateauing. And then that's usually the time I say, okay, I think the new floor is set for this card. This is the time that I want to start going in. And Market Movers is great for that. There are other tools that are great as well. You can do it manually, but it's just a lot of time and effort, and I'd rather just spend the money and invest it there. But I do go over that on my channel, and I like to teach it because it's more of stuff that we can apply to other parts of our life too. Like, you want to buy a house someday. Well, maybe some of this knowledge would be great for that. So it's not just $100 card or $1,000 card, but maybe it's your $500,000 home that you'd rather have that mindset around too.
So do you think a lot of the advantages you have here with tools like the Market Movers, the Sport Card Investor, and approaching this with your financial background is, well, first let me ask you this. When you sell a card, are you often selling to another, I'm going to use the word investor, or are you often selling to, or are you more often than not selling to just a collector, let's say, someone who just likes the card, likes the player?
I would imagine that majority now is to other investors and flippers.
Okay.
And I believe I like that strategy more because I think I'm more patient and I do more research than the average investor or flipper. And so what I like to do is I'd rather get in very early and then get out early so that they can get in, get the card, maybe make another profit, play the gambling game of, hey, I'm buying this player right before the season starts. If he has a 3-game winning streak, the values could skyrocket, but he could also get injured and tear his ACL in the first quarter of the first game and be out for the rest of the year. And so knowing the emotions behind a lot of people, and especially with a lot of flippers and people getting in, I feel like they're very emotionally driven and impatient. And a lot of people would rather look to make a lot of money very quickly, while I'd rather have more of the methodical approach. So because of that, I'd rather get the cards that I know the flippers will buy at a certain time and make 20%, 50%, 80%, 200% profit and just get out. And then whatever they make or whatever they lose, that's on them. But at this point, that's what I'm leaning towards.
So you brought up the beginning of the season. So do you typically make your money during the off season before there is that risk of the player getting injured? You'd rather let someone else take that risk on while you kind of take an approach of, okay, I don't want to take on that much risk. So I'm gonna do my trade on this player before their season starts, or is that just kind of an example?
Well, it's funny because like the sample size is still very small because I've only been back in for about 14 months total. So there hasn't been too many seasons, but I have noticed that the best, and it's not like the best time to buy is always off season, because the more people get used to that or hear about it, the more people will jack up the prices in off season. But I have noticed that whenever there isn't nearly as much money in going towards that sport because the attention's not going to that sport, I would rather look at that sport. If
Gotcha.
it's 6 months away from being relevant, I'd rather look at it 6 months out versus 3 months out when prices start to go up. I'm trying, it's always, it's all supply and demand, and it's always gauging what others are doing and how they're thinking. But knowing that a lot of people are only thinking a month or 2 months out, and they're a lot of them are going for home runs rather than singles and doubles, I would much rather play 5 months or 6 months out and get my profit with very low risk and multiply that and do that over and over again than buy a player leading into the playoffs and then that team gets eliminated in the first round and the prices dip 80% and they have to wait till perhaps next season to even back to zero. So for me, I'm more of the don't lose money, make some approach versus the high risk, high reward approach.
So it seems to me that trading active players, well, although retired players, there is this kind of media image and media presence they still have, certainly that can affect their value, like if there's a scandal or something. But then it seems to me in our conversation that trading active players, those who are still in the league, seems like maybe higher risk, higher reward than retired players. Is that kind of a fair generality?
Yeah, as a generality, sure, because it depends. Are they still building their legacy, and is it established? Like Tom Brady is the perfect example of someone that pretty much could not ruin his legacy unless one of those scandals came out, because
Mm,
he's likable, he's a winner, he's the best ever, and he could still add to his resume on the field. At the same time, who knows what he's going to do in retirement? Maybe he
right.
becomes a coach and wins 2 Super Bowls as a coach in the next
Mm-hmm.
15 years.
Right.
But like you have guys like LeBron James and Tom Brady, where you have the best of both worlds, where you're basically Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame status already, best ever already, but you still have room to add to it. But then you have someone like Karl Malone or David Robinson or Hakeem Olajuwon, where you're not really relevant. And even though you're a Hall of Famer and you're great, what would make your prices go up drastically without it just being more money being pumped into the hobby? Maybe the Last Dance documentary, which was great. I don't know if you saw it. Have you seen it on Netflix?
The Kobe, or
Uh,
no, Michael
Not
Jordan.
the
That was
Kobe
Michael Jordan,
documentary,
right? Michael Jordan.
the Jordan one.
Yeah, I saw the
Did you
Jordan
see it
one.
or no?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I thought it was awesome. But when that happened last April, all the 80s and 90s players rode that wave up. So you had Scottie Pippen rookie cards going for 5 times what they normally would, and Kobe started going up, and Shaq, and all these guys. So it depends. If you want something that is safe long term, then you could buy these players and forget about it for several years, and hopefully you'll be fine. But what I like to do is have more of a strategic approach, where maybe it's a guy like Shaquille O'Neal who is retired. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the best centers ever, but he's also in the media. He has a great role on TNT with Inside the NBA. He's tied to LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Kobe Bryant. And so I could actually think to myself, hey, Shaq is a pretty interesting investment, because even though his legacy is sealed over here, he could be riding the coattails of that Kobe documentary.
Right.
Or there's something with the Dream Team in the Olympics, or something on TNT and during the playoffs.
Now, so we've used a lot of basketball examples. So am I right in assuming that you mostly trade basketball right now?
I'm actually a huge football fan, way
Okay.
more than basketball.
Okay.
However, for the card market, it is basketball cards are the biggest sport for cards, and it is
Really?
an international sport. And you do only have a handful of stars, and it's very easy to see their face and their personas. While football it's local to Americans for the most part. They wear helmets. You have a lot of positions that don't matter.
Hmm.
Usually it's just quarterbacks that garner most of the attention and the money. But every sport, if you're a fan of UFC or boxing or swimming or uh, everything else, those prices are going up, and there's a market for it.
That's interesting because I think most people, sometimes a synonym for sports cards is baseball cards, right? Like
Mm.
when I was a kid, baseball cards, baseball. Even though that would generally refer to not only baseball cards but football and basketball and hockey and all the other sports as
Mm.
well. But it's interesting that you say that perhaps these days
Mm.
basketball cards are kind of the most popular, both maybe from a collector or from a retail perspective and an investor's perspective. That's
Mm.
interesting to me.
I was just going to say, if you look on Instagram and you see who has the biggest followings, you see LeBron James, and you see
Hmm.
all these basketball players, Luka Doncic and Zion Williamson, and you're like, this guy's not even nearly as good as Tom Brady, and why does he have way more followers? Why is he way more relevant?
Interesting.
And I think that the very cool thing about sports cards right now is that it is getting incredibly international. While traditionally this hobby, to my knowledge, has been very US based. I know there's soccer stickers in Europe, and that was a thing, but in terms of basketball cards, baseball cards, football cards, it's very national. And now on YouTube in my community, we have people from Australia. It's blown up in Australia, parts
Really
of Asia,
interesting.
Central America, Europe. And it's cool because even if you are a bit worried about the US economy, which most of us in the financial realm are to a degree, at least there is a bit of safety knowing that if you are interested in this and you like soccer and you like basketball, there are other countries that just love the NBA and love soccer. And, you have Ronaldo with like 300 million Instagram followers that just destroys everyone else. But you're like, hey, maybe Ronaldo cards are a pretty cool investment, and I don't have to worry about the U.S. economy crashing because maybe there's 50 other countries that can have interest in it.
So I guess what I'm hearing from that is the sports cards market is pretty not necessarily correlated to the stock market, the U.S. stock market, let's say the economy, real estate. Not only because of its asset class as a collectible, right, but also because there's an international appeal now that maybe wasn't the case pre-internet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you
Okay.
think of platforms like COMC, and there's another one called Star Stock that does a really good job. And you can be anywhere in the world buying cards, trading cards. You can be anywhere doing this stuff. And so it's getting more international. But if you are worried about it, then I would say basketball and soccer would be sports that you'd want to focus a bit more on. And then sports like baseball and football, it's a bit riskier in that regard.
More U.S. dependent, right? Do people have money to spend on collectible kind of thing? Because ultimately, yeah, you may flip to an investor, but ultimately, I mean, is this first? Tell me if this is correct. In my mind, it seems okay. You might sell mostly to an investor who sells to an investor, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the ultimate price is largely determined by that end collector, right? Who's going to take that card and keep it in his or her collection. Is that
Yeah,
oversimplifying it, or is that fair?
sure. Sure. I think there are cards that, like a lot of the cards I'm buying now, aren't the most collectible cards, but it's more of a currency card. I think of it as like currency of a player, where it's pretty much saying, I want to gamble with this player. And so I think it's going to go up. Now, if this player, like let's say Deshaun Watson, this quarterback, he went from being the number one talked about guy for what team is he going to go to, all this hype, to is this guy even going to be playing in the NFL this year, or is he going to be suspended or anything like that? And so the cards I'm focusing on for him are the currency cards, the ones that can move very quickly, because I would rather get it to the other flippers that are willing to make that gamble later in the year. But is it the most collectible card? Right now, I would say no, it's not. But if he wins 2 Super Bowls over the next 10 years, collectors will want that card.
I see. I understand. Okay.
So
That makes sense.
I think there's in a way it's also it's phases. Like Tom Brady, there's a lot of collectible cards because it's Tom Brady, right? There's a lot of it doesn't have to be autographed. There could be just hundreds of cards that have Tom Brady's picture on it that collectors will want because he's earned that legacy. And then for a player like Deshaun Watson, who's talented but very early in that stage of building up his legacy on the field, and is he going to be a great quarterback? Is he going to win a ring? There may only be a couple cards that have autographs and special low print parallels, like a pink border or a gold border or something like that, where it's very low in its population, but there may only be a few of those. And so right now I'm not even interested in those because I don't think he has many collectors, but I know that there are a lot of gamblers that would be interested in these cards.
Okay, so we talked about these factors. Obviously, the player, the year, the card, the rookie card, right? There are these other factors as well. I guess what you've mentioned, probably the maker of the card and special aspects of the card, be it signature or a piece of a jersey or a trim, like you described. Are those basically the factors that you analyze when considering card, the player, whether it's the rookie card or not, and kind of these other elements of the card and also who made the card?
Yeah, I mean, to keep it simple, I'm focusing on rookie cards only at this point, with a very rare exception. And the rare exception would be Tom Brady cards, because he's been around for 20 years and there's a lot of valuable ones, but it would have to be a second-year card or something else I really like. Then you have guys that have been in the league for 12 or 14 years, and maybe their second-year card has some value, but most of the time, just rookie card, especially if they're a newer player. Rookie card, that's it. And then the sets I consider for basketball and football are Prism, and Prism right now is number one. And then Prism has their base variation, which you open the pack, there's the card, it's the rookie card, and that's it. And then they have all these parallels, and that's just basically different colors, different variations. It's ways of putting in a rare version of that card that looks cooler, looks shinier, has sparkles, has red, white, and blue, all that. But it can get very confusing. So the only only variation I would consider is their silver. And their silver just pretty much means a refractor. So if you remember back to the 90s, you would have like a Topps Finest card, and then you'd have a Topps Finest refractor, which meant it just had like this really cool rainbow oil slick kind of shimmer to it. And it just means it's a lot rarer. It looks cooler. But Prism silver, and then you have optic hollow. Hollow is that rarer refractor version of optic. And then the other set I consider now is select. And select to me, I think is the best looking set, but also I think it has the most to gain because it was a set that you could only find in card shops. You couldn't find it at Target or Walmart or anywhere else. But then as of literally last week, they made it available at Target and all these places. And so I think what that's going to do is bring in a lot of people from all these different stores that are finding it, and all these people to now be interested in prior years. So Prism, Optic, Select, and then Silver or Hollow. Keep it that simple at first, and rookie cards, and then do the research, and that's a good start.
Is Prism Panini or?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
All of that is Panini, and Panini,
all that's
I know.
Panini. Okay.
It makes me hungry every time I see the name. So I'm like,
that's such an interesting
name of a damn sandwich.
Right, exactly. That's such an I saw that. I was like, is this what he's talking? Panini. Like, it's just such an interesting name for trading cards.
I mean, did you make your fortune trademarking a sandwich and then you rolled it over into sports cards? So Panini is the only licensed company for basketball and football, and I'd have to check the other sports, but I know Topps is the manufacturer for MLB, and then Upper Deck is of hockey. And I'd have to check soccer and others. I know Panini makes soccer cards. I don't know if they're the only ones, but so it's a weird situation where the exclusive rights are owned by a single company. So you don't have a Topps basketball card nowadays. You don't have an Upper Deck basketball or Upper Deck football card. So
that's so interesting because when I was a kid, there wasn't this sport by sport monopoly. If I recall, I think I had Topps cards,
Fleer,
baseball, Fleer, Upper Deck. I remember Topps and some other ones for every sport. I mean, most of mine were basketball and baseball, a little football, and a little bit of hockey and soccer. But if I recall, I think the manufacturers kind of made all of them. I had no idea until you told me right now. Now there is, let's call it a licensing that's very specific to each sport. What do you know the history on that, or how that kind of came about and why? Because that seems that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I don't know the history too much, but I will say that Panini took over in, I believe, 2012. I think 2012 was the first year, and that was the year where Prism came out, and then Select came out, and a lot of these sets. So that's when they really took over. I think they had dual rights in 2009, 2010. It was more of a transition year where Topps was slowing down and exiting while Panini took over. In terms of why, it has to boil down to money, right? Like it has to be there was more money for that sport or for someone to be able to make that move. Because if there was more money going the other direction, we would have Topps and Fleer and Upper Deck and Score and everything else. But what's interesting is that the licensing doesn't last forever, so it could be up for grabs. I'd have to check the year, but maybe in a couple of years it switches over to Topps, which could really throw the whole card market for a loop. But it's something worth noting. It's something definitely worth understanding, because if you buy a Panini product of baseball, they cannot put Mike Trout's Los Angeles or Anaheim Angels, right? I don't follow baseball, but I'm guessing I'm pretty sure it's the Angels. They can't put the logo. They can't put the team name. They just have to put Mike Trout, Anaheim baseball team.
Really?
That's it. Yeah. So if you look up Mike Trout's cards, it'll just say Mike Trout. You won't see the logo. It'll be an angle where his the team logo is not on it. But that's the way that they have to do it, because they're not the licensing. So look right there. Yeah. Who do you see? Like, what team is that? What player is that?
There's nothing on the helmet. You don't see any logo or anything. It says it's Juan Soto. I guess you can use his name, obviously. But yeah, I see what you mean. There's no intellectual property of whatever team he's on. That's so interesting that there's
Yeah.
this shift now.
Yeah.
In that way. I don't I mean, personally to me, I would be fascinated by a video on that if you were to ever create one. But okay, now we've talked for 45 minutes about various things that I find extremely interesting. Now let's get a little more practical here. You know, let's say I have $100, right? Let's say I have $100 and I want to, I don't know, maybe get a 50% return on my investment over the next couple months here. I mean, where do I start? Do I just go? Do I just kind of just think to myself, okay, and I think earlier you alluded, this is probably a very amateur analysis. Okay, well, you know, I think this player's doing well, and so I'm going to buy his card. That's probably very amateur. That's probably the kind of analysis many investors do, and those are investors that you're able to sell cards to and maybe make more profit than because you go a little bit deeper. You go deeper than that. So
Yeah.
what's, I guess, kind of, and let's say that's my mindset. What would your advice to me be? Right, I have $100. I want to turn that into 150 over the next few months. You know, I follow basketball. Let's say I kind of have a good intuition about the players and the season and the teams, but other than that, I don't know very much about you know, the sports cards trading market and the trading world. What would kind of be your advice to me to get started, the first few steps?
Okay. Well, for me, a $50 profit on $100 is very doable. I think that's safe with the amount of time that you want to put that you want to separate from the result. Like if you expect that tomorrow, that's going to be a very high risk, high reward situation. Right. But for me, I'm like, okay, a 50% profit, it's not a stretch in this market. Maybe if it was super flat or if money was leaving, that would be pretty tough. But with enough months in advance, the first thing I would do is, okay, what's hot right now? Well, we have NBA going into the playoffs. We have things coming up. I would automatically go to when do I want that $50 by? Or that $50 profit by? If it's 3 months or 6 months out, then I have a lot of ways to get there. If I want it by August, then I could think to myself, okay, well, a lot is going to happen by August. Let's reverse engineer it. So we have the start of football season. We have the Olympics ending. We have a lot of stuff. I would have that calendar of the events happening. Then I would say, okay, I have 3 reasons why this player could go up. And let's use Shaq as an example. I say, all right, well, Shaq, his prices have gone down a lot since January when all those 80s, 90s, 2000s players were high. So let me look at his prices now. And what I would need to do for myself to feel comfortable is I would have to see that his prices had hit at least $150, $175, $200 to even invest $100 into and feel like I could get it up to 150. I want to make sure that the highest point of sale in this market had been reached way above what I expect to sell it at. I do not want to buy a card and say, well, I'm paying the most for it, but as long as all this happens and money still floods the hobby and all this, then my record high will just be sold to someone else who will pay the record high. I don't want to assume that. So the criteria is, what is the highest price? If I want 150 total and I'm putting in 100, I want that top sale to be at least 200, maybe 225, something like that. Then what's the reasoning behind that? What's the reasoning behind why I feel like his prices would go up again? And then it would be, okay, well, tied to Kobe. So Kobe documentary. He's a top analyst and maybe he does something or becomes relevant in NBA playoffs. He played for the Dream Team. You have the Olympics. I have a couple reasons to feel like, okay, in the next 3, 4, 5 months, that 50% profit will happen if I'm paying only 100. But if I'm paying 165 and the highest was 200, that's not enough. I don't have faith based on that. So it's a lot of reverse engineering, but I also have got to look at the data. I cannot just go off of what I think and feel, because I feel like a lot of investors have gotten away with that because money is flooding the hobby. So they're getting bailed out by mediocre investments. So a 20% profit is actually turning into a 200% profit because $100 million has just entered the hobby since they bought it. So someone newer is buying that card. And I don't want to have that be my approach, because at some point it's going to stabilize and money may actually leave. And I want that strategy that is reliable and more methodical to work out when money's leaving the hobby, not just working when money is flooding in.
I want to come back to that point about money entering, money leaving, to kind of bull market, bear market. Is that kind of a fair way to put it? Okay,
Yeah.
let's come back to that in a bit. I kind of want to go in this kind of this example. So, okay, so $100. Let's say I like Shaq, right? We have Olympics, we got NBA playoffs, right? Shaq's obviously in the media. He's a commentator, so we're thinking, okay, well, if I buy it for $100, maybe at the peak, earlier this year with the 80s and 90s stars peaking, it hit at 200. But now if I can get it at 100, that seems pretty fair. And I think maybe with some additional popularity here in the coming months, just based on what's going on in basketball and maybe with Shaq, I could maybe reasonably expect the price to go up. So okay, so that's kind of the analysis there at a high level. It's kind of combining your knowledge of kind of the future events in the sports world with looking at the charts as well, right? And then making basically an informed decision on those two factors. Are those basically kind of the two primary factors there? The chart and just it's kind of like stocks, right? You got the chart and you gotta kind of and there's some I don't want to say like educated intuition, informed. No one can tell the future, but kind of an informed, informed predictions about what's going to happen. Right? It seems kind of very similar to that with sports cards. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
I would add one more factor in there, and it's not just the charts saying this is the price and that's it. It's what is the reasoning behind the spike and the dip. And the reason why human behavior fascinates me so much, especially in sports cards, is because back in late October, early November, you could have bought a rookie card of a guy like Anthony Davis, who's a star player for the Lakers. His rookie card in the best possible grade, a PSA 10, you could have bought it for $1,200. Now, that exact same card went up to $2,400, which would have been a 2x profit before the start of this season, which was only 2 months later. So I asked myself, why in the world was this card that low when the Lakers had won the championship last season? He won his first ring. What else do you want? And it dipped. And then I go, hold on a second. Late October, early November, stimulus money had run out. The last stimulus check was in September. And then we had the cases spiking. And a lot of the country was going back into lockdown. And money wasn't flowing. And we had this election. And everyone's fearful around election time. And we don't have holiday spending yet because the people that are going to spend are going to spend Black Friday onwards to Christmas and maybe a bit after with eBay gift cards and whatnot. So looking in hindsight, because I remember seeing these prices and being like, this is insane. And either the sports card bubble is over with and that's it, which I don't think it is because it hasn't been very long, or this is a very temporary situation where prices will go up. And so I wasn't in the realm of investing then as I am now, where I talked to others about it and they were like, yeah, it looks like a good deal, but I don't know. I'm not sure if the bubble's over and it's just done. And then obviously it wasn't. But that combination of factors made me understand, okay, human behavior and access to money and desirability to invest versus spend our money on something else is incredibly important, which is also why the next couple months in summer, I'm going to be looking at, hey, is money going to temporarily leave the hobby as restaurants are now open for the first time, maybe full capacity, and maybe some festivals and travel and all this will open up. Maybe the prices will soften more. So, the charts are great, the players are great, the sports are great, but at the end of it, it's how we react to the player. It's how we react. Right. Do we have money and do we want to put our money into this versus going out to the bar with our friends or going to dinner or going on a cruise? And that's why this summer is going to be very interesting, but it's just something else to factor in.
So it's important to keep in mind these macroeconomic factors too. So let's talk about, and I completely understand that this has been something you've done for a year. So maybe you haven't seen like bear markets and bull markets, historically with sports cards, but I think I haven't followed sports cards, but I remember like reading maybe in the 2000s or late 2000s or early 2010s, something to the effect of like, you should just throw out your sports card or something. But now it's hot again, right? But I remember reading an article. I don't know that maybe that had something to do with like the recession, the big crash in 2008, 2009. People were losing their homes. I mean, people, unemployed, like, and the stimulus was not as huge as it has been this past year back then. I'll tell you that much. Maybe it was just that was just a factor of people didn't have the money to put into collectibles like sports cards. So it sounds like there's kind of this, like any asset class, there's times of there's times of this and there's times of this, not just at an individual asset level, but just for the whole asset class as a whole. So it sounds like there is an element where your financial background, right, has it's probably helped you with that as well, maybe more than the average guy who just wants to buy a Shaq card because he likes Shaq and he thinks he can flip it quick. So it sounds like there's a little more calculus involved here than, I mean, I'm not saying it's rocket science, but there's a little more calculus involved here than one might think. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, if you take a look at the price charts and you go back several years, even a LeBron James rookie card that's worth thousands and thousands of dollars now is only worth a couple $100, maybe $300 or $400 before in 2019. So, I mean, I think it's important to go back and look at where the cards have been just in the last 18 months to get a good idea of, hey, if it was here 18 months ago, there's nothing that's stopping it from going back down. Now, I don't believe it'll ever go back to that floor because, for one, it's fun and there's a lot of new opportunities and more people interested in returning to it. There's parents bonding with their kids, and I'm closer to my best friend now than I was over the last 15 years since we were teenagers. So there's a lot that is keeping the market higher. But I also know that there are ebbs and flows, and sports cards are having its renaissance right now. This is the time for it to be the hot thing and for people to come back to it, just like NFTs and everything else. Like, oh my God, NFTs. And
right.
Okay, NBA Top Shot. Right. It's the industry is going to stay, but the novelty will wear off. Right. Sure. So it will be a steady growth, and maybe money will leave at some point. I have the feeling that the pace of growth will really lower and become more of like a 10%, 20% growth per year or something, just rather than 500% growth, because that's just not sustainable. But when you have other countries and other people returning and people saying, hey, I'm closer now to my teenage kid, my independent teenage kid now than ever before because we couldn't bond over anything, that's when I say, all right, you're staying in this. This is not just a hot flash in the pan type of thing for you. Right. But, having this background, I do know that what's happening now is temporary. The prices, I don't know the future, but that's also why I like investing in the cards that I'm picking, because I want to buy cards that are 6 months out, 8 months out, because I want to be able to get out if I sense something, or if the market crashes and all of a sudden an 8-unit apartment building is on sale. Yeah, that's a better investment. You tell me affordable housing that's cash flowing is not as good as sports cards? No, I'm sorry. I want the cash flow. I want something that people need, and sports cards will be a bonus, but I can't put sports cards ahead of something as stable and especially cash flowing like affordable real estate. So that's why I'm in that 6-month window, 8-month window. I want to liquidate. I want to be able to adjust with the market because it's evolving so rapidly. I do not want to be stuck in something that might only be a 2 or 3 year investment with so much volatility going on.
It's kind of like crypto. You don't want to be left holding the bag. I like personally, I feel that when I dump money into index funds, or like rental properties as well in the area, that I don't really pay attention to that. It's the market's going to crash. I know markets crash, but I feel with those two asset classes, I can close my eyes and wake up in 30 years and I'll be okay. Right. But I feel things like crypto, right? I got to keep a closer eye on my crypto. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I feel that. What's that?
It's changing every hour.
Exactly. Right. And things go up like this. Well, there's going to be, I'm not saying it's going to go to zeros, but things are going to come down. There's going to be bull and bear markets in something like crypto that are more severe, in my opinion, than the stock market or real estate market. And it seems that maybe with sports cards, maybe it's not as volatile as crypto, but it seems that it's something you got to keep an eye on. So you're not left. It's an asset class you got to keep an eye on, so you're not left holding the bag, right? And that's why you have the 6 to 8 months window where that's what that's your horizon there.
Yeah, until there's some stability, because look, I've not mentioned the word sports cards once up until probably January 2020, since I was 12 years old, 14 years old. And now everyone's talking about sports cards and NFTs. And, what was cryptocurrency 5 years ago for most people? Did anyone know 5 or 7 years ago? What percentage of people knew that word back then? So until it's proven itself and it's made more sense long term, I'm not going to invest like I would cash flowing real estate or anything else that has generational, people from different generations have built wealth and passed it down and taught these principles. It's like that's secure. So I'm the same way. I mean, I got to keep my finger on the pulse of the hobby and be very on top of it, because I have a lot of money invested in it, and I'm having a lot of fun. But I also know that I create my YouTube station because I want to open myself up to other opportunities, and it's fun, and I get to share the financial pools, but I can't control what the whole market's going to do. I could only hope that it grows sustainably and people are in it for the long term. And, it's just been such a fun ride. I really hope that's the case.
Now, just for the viewers out there, nothing on this YouTube video is investment advice, just like nothing else on my channel. Nothing else on YouTube is investment advice. This is for informational, educational, even entertainment purposes. But Jarryd or Brad, I'm just curious. Like, you said you have a lot of money. Like, I don't know how personally you want to get here, and we can certainly cut this part out if you're not comfortable. But are you comfortable sharing what percentage of kind of your net worth is right now in sports cards? Is that something you'd be willing to share?
I would say roughly. I wouldn't say 40%, but I think I've allocated, or I'm willing to put up to 40 to 50. But it's also because I'm putting so much time and effort into this that I feel like I have the advantage over so many people because of the amount of research, the amount of tweaking, the amount of everything, and being more principle based, plus building the YouTube station and everything else. It's all feeding it. So I'm okay losing 40%. If this is the way it's going to go, then this is the way it's going to go. But about 40%, I would say right now, but I'd be going up to about 50%.
Okay.
Need be.
And we just want to caveat this here by pointing out that Brad this is your full time. This is your full time. You're almost like you're a trader, right? So this isn't prescriptive, right? We are definitely not telling viewers out there put 40 to 50% of your so this is what Brad is doing. It's his full time thing, and he's monetizing this in other ways than just the appreciation of the sports cars themselves. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about your channel? I assume you're making ad revenue from the channel. I don't know if you have other revenue streams. Do you want to talk a little bit about your business with comeback cards and just as we wrap up here?
Yeah, sure. So look, I knew that YouTube was a great platform because it's the toughest one. And I'm sure you know that. It is audio, it is visual, it is storytelling, it is everything. But I got interested in YouTube years ago when I had an old station of mine, the Millennials Guide to Real Estate, which documented my journey into real estate. I soon realized I hated being a realtor. And so the only video that went viral was talking about how to pass the real estate exam without reading the book. But once I saw that and I saw, hey, you know what? People are watching this, they're liking it. And the company I used to pass the real estate exam contacted me as an affiliate.
Wow.
I saw some opportunity. I was like, hey, this is fulfilling. I help these people study for a test, bulletproof coffee, and make sure you take it at the time that you're mentally awake. If you're a morning person, take it in the morning. If you're an evening person, try and take it later. Like just stuff that people would say, hey, that really helped. And then I said, all right, well, if I'm going to get into cards, and I'm a huge personal finance and personal growth junkie. Like my biggest thing is like personal growth over pretty much any other investment. If you're the only person that you're going to be with your entire life. So the more you evolve, the more the opportunities will come, and the other investments will just be icing on the cake. So I said, you know what, I really find fulfillment building the station, and wherever it leads, but let me put everything into it, because if I invest in cards and it goes well, I could share it. But if it doesn't, I could share my mistakes and the learning lessons, and maybe my biggest mistake, and I've made a lot of them, and I continue to make a lot of them. At least I go, man, I can't wait to make a video on this, because I can help someone else avoid that same mistake, and at least I get a little bit of fulfillment out of that. And so, and of course, you know, you have the Google ad revenue, which is not much, but hey, $800, $900 a month, that's rent, right? And then affiliate opportunities here. And then, you know, my goal is for ESPN or Fox Sports to say, hey, we're putting together a monthly show on our website or on Fox or on ESPN about sports cards.
Right.
We'd love to have you as a panelist.
It's like instant viral. You know, that's the type of stuff that takes a channel to, like, you know, 100, 1,000, million, you know, it's just those things like that publicity here is so huge, especially with sports. I mean, sports is such a huge, you know, such a huge thing. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for that kind of exposure. Just looking at your channel here, there was a video you told me about earlier, and I think if people want to learn more about this, and what Brad's up to here, it's this one, right? This is how I'll make full-time income with sports cards.
Yeah, that's the one. If you are, that's not going to teach you which sports cards to buy or anything like that, but it will talk about the game plan I'm going through, because the goal for 2021 was to produce full-time income.
Right.
I don't know why I'm wearing a pea coat in that video. It's here living in Southern California, but it must have, yeah, there it is. Like my good timing.
That's great.
Good timing. But the awesome. Point is that, you know, I'm a fan of reverse engineering, right? It's like, I want to lose weight. What is the way to do it? How do I break it down to daily steps? And the same thing, if I want to create full-time income out of something that's so fun, what way can I do it? Well, I'm going to have to invest this amount of money in order to make a 50% return. And that is saying that some cards will be a 2x profit, others will be losses, others will be held for an extra year. And I'm trying to be as accurate as possible, but I needed to do that. So this is if you want to make $300 or $1,000 or $10,000, this will just lay out the different ways you can make it in sports cards, and then the different types of profit margins to expect based on your knowledge, your risk tolerance, things like that, and how you can actually create the game plan. So it's not just like, well, I hope I make 500. Instead, it's no. This is the plan to make $500 per month based on something that's structured and something I could follow every week and tweak every month and get closer and closer to it. And just the last thing I want to say on this is the goal is to make full-time income for the year. Now, that not every month is going to be selling $5,000 worth of profit. Some months, like this month, is more of a stocking up on inventory, so that when football season comes, I can offload $30,000 worth of cards and make $15,000 worth of profit. Right. So I know that when you look at the charts and you use the patience and you say, you know, be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy, and you can kind of get used to that macro year or longer viewpoint, it's a lot easier to achieve these goals. But if it's like, look, I got to make $2,000 profit every single month off of this, regardless of what's going on in the world and in the sports cards, it's going to be a lot tougher. So I just want to caveat that.
Man, I feel a course coming here. I feel that there's just so much knowledge in your head about this that I see that in the cards for you. No pun intended.
yeah, there it is.
All right.
Well, ironically, the course I couldn't do because I was just so bored. Now maybe I'll be able to do with this, but that's what the whole point of YouTube is. I have these ideas. How do I structure it in a way that's very easy to digest and people value? And maybe there's a course in the works, but I'm waiting for ESPN to give me a call. That's the goal.
Right, man. Hey, this was great. I mean, we've been talking for well over 70 minutes here. This was great. I mean, please, those of you out there, if you're interested in this at all, do check out Brad's channel, the Comeback Card Investor here on YouTube. There's just a wealth of information on this channel about sports cards and getting into sports cards and making money with sports cards. So, Brad, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today.
Logan, thanks so much, man. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so fired up to talk about this. Whether sports cards is your thing or not, if you could find something that really lights up your spirit and you find yourself getting fired up talking about, then
Right.
I feel like you found your perfect niche. So
Yeah, I
thank
mean,
you again.
if you can find something like that and you can make money at it like you're doing, I mean, life is grand, So
The last part of it is I just want to find a way to involve charities, because then I don't have to separate it. To find a charitable cause and make money and do this.
Right.
But I'm working on that. Maybe that'll come in the next couple months.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, keep us informed on that. I know we'll definitely be in touch.
Awesome, Logan. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks again. Thanks.
Thanks.